My name is Alya Shandra. I'm editor-in-chief of Ukrainian English language outlet, Euromaidan Press. So as a journalist, I do very many things. I manage a team of journalists. I edit articles, I write articles, I research, I do social media, I train new journalists, I fundraise, I look to increase efficiency. So I do very, very many things to run an independent media outlet. I was in Kiev and I could not sleep that night because I felt that something was happening. So me and another journalist on our team, we were up and we were listening to Putin's speech, and we were just shocked. We were shell shocked when he announced that he was starting the war, and we saw it unfold in real time. So we started tweeting about it. Of course, it was just surreal because I did not believe to the last second that he would really invade like this. Many people in Ukraine were convinced that anything could happen, any sort of escalation, any sort of hybrid war intensification, but not this. So, of course, we were shocked when it happened. I left my city of Kiev pretty soon after the invasion because I had kids and I was also pregnant. So our family decided that we should rather leave. And we got our kids out of the country, but returned with my husband to Lviv in order to do what we can here. And for me, I would really like to stay in Ukraine for as much as I can in order to just cover the situation and help as a journalist as much as I can. My working life at the moment my life is work at the moment. I do not, well, sometimes it has pauses for sleep and food, but mostly it is work. And I cannot imagine any way else that it could be, because I mean, I constantly think if I'm doing enough, if I could do my job better, how I can help professionally the way that I'm doing. I mean, I'm not sure. If I wasn't pregnant, maybe I would like to take up arms. I just want to do anything I can to help my country. So basically, my team and I mean, my whole team is working like this because nothing is more important to us right now. We work 24/7, so no weekends. We work at the night, take night shifts, and of course it's very exhausting, but we are happy that we can contribute to the defending our country like this. First of all, we really expanded our live coverage on Twitter, because this is something that readers all over the world are following. They're tracking how the conflict develops in real time, so we dedicate a lot of resources there. We cover a lot of first-hand accounts of people who experience Russian aggression. So there are a lot of social media stories, for instance, that a lot of people post what they went through when they tried to evacuate from towns besieged by Russian invaders. We also post analysis that covers the Ukrainian situation, expresses the Ukrainian position. We do daily briefs also, so that readers can keep track of the rapidly developing situation. These briefs, they cover all the military developments, all the political developments, and I think this is something very useful now. Well, we got out, relatively early, so the road it wasn't so dangerous. Right now, the road to from Kiev to Lviv, it is really not that easy to travel because the Russians are trying to encircle the city. So I would probably not be able to repeat the same route now. There were big lines on the roads. Everybody wanted to get out. There was a lack of gas. People were standing near gas stations too, just spending the night there waiting for the morning in order to recharge their cars. So the city was really it was like a ghost city. There were no cars on the streets. There were no people on the streets. It was absolutely empty. There were a lot of block posts on the road. So the territorial defense forces plus the army, they were setting up these road checks. They would check your documents, ask where you're going. And also, of course, the curfew had already started. So many cities, they were completely dark. There were no lights at all. So either people turn off the lights or they put on blinds on the windows. And as we know right now, that's a very good strategy, actually, because I mean, it's no secret that the Russians, they specifically target residential areas. They specifically target areas with women and children. So of course we need to mask where these buildings are located. The number one problem, of course, is safety for those journalists who are in the field. And a lot of my colleagues, they are in the field right now. And just today, we know that a journalist from Hromadske, she went missing. So perhaps she was probably kidnapped by the Russian army. And that is just a terrible thing to contemplate. Many journalists have been killed. Many have been injured. And it's dangerous. It's a war zone. So this is the number one problem that we experience. I think the second problem is internet, because, well, for me personally, we have air raids here. So whenever there's a bomb threat, we have to go take cover. And this is actually a big deal because today in the morning, the Russians, they shelled a location that's not far from where I am right now. So it was a very good thing that we were in the bomb shelter. And of course, in the bomb shelters, very few of them have internet. So, I mean, for me, that was a big problem for me, how I can continue working in a place with no connection. I guess the third thing right now is probably more stricter rules that are imposed by the government for journalists. So there are rules on what you can film, what you can't film, what you can take photos of and not. There's a suspicion towards journalists because we have a lot of like saboteurs, so to speak, saboteurs that go around and like find positions that the Russians can attack. And they are around in all the cities, and of course the National Guard, the Territorial Defense Police, they're trying to identify them. But for instance, I was tuning into a live broadcast of a TV station, and the siren, the air alarm went off at the precise moment that I was supposed to tune in. So I just took my phone, I went to the bomb shelter, and along the way I decided I would just stand in front of this bomb shelter, and it's a school. This bomb shelter is in the basement of a school. So I thought I would just stand for a few moments and just tune into this broadcast and then go into the bomb shelter. And the people in the school, they were very suspicious of this. They thought that I was a saboteur, that I was filming the territory in order for the Russians to plan an attack. Later, they called the police. They demanded to see my documents. They did not believe that I'm a journalist, and were generally very suspicious towards me. So it took a lot of talking and a lot of proving to prove that I really was just tuning in for a TV broadcast, and that this work is very important. So right now, I guess there's a sort of a conflict between security needs that our military administrations think are required, and freedom for journalists to just do their job. And I'm hoping that this conflict can be resolved because, of course, Ukraine needs as much coverage as it can, and journalists and correspondents in the country, they need to have the freedom to film things. There are some general rules that our government shared for media that they can't do. They can't they can't reveal Ukrainian military positions. They can't do anything that would really put the military operations under risk, or the security of soldiers under risk. So journalists have to be constantly conscious about that. Also, right now, we are advised not to share photos and videos of explosions of missile strikes in order for them not to be corrected by not to serve as correction for the Russian fire. We're also advised not to share locations of women, children, shelters, so they would also not become a bombing position. But other than that, I guess it's pretty much okay, except for, I mean, there are a lot of foreign correspondents right now in Ukraine, and they have problem getting accreditation in due time to the war zone. So I guess that's it. I mean, freedom of the media, basically, it's under danger most if you just go in the war zone, if you get into the hands of the Russian occupiers. Well, of course, Russia is pushing its own narratives right now. It's pushing narratives that Ukraine basically it should abandon resistance in order to not cause more civilian damage. So Russia, of course, it's activating its campaigns, and one of the recurrent narratives also, like in the international scene, is that Russia is not trying to prove that it's right, but it's trying to prove that Ukrainians are just as bad. So we've seen, for instance, in the evacuation of civilians, there were many accusations of racism on the Ukrainian border. And for some reason, this these accusations exploded and obscured the real problem, which is the Russian invasion. So the Twitter sphere was full of discussions about alleged Ukrainian racism, even though there wasn't, I mean, human rights activists, they did their own independent report, and they found that it wasn't so much a case of racism, but of prioritizing women and children. And so it's a very stressful situation. And so basically, you know, it was a narrative being twisted to show that Ukraine is just as bad, and that's why it doesn't deserve support. And in the international sphere, we see many such plots, many such narratives being pushed. And basically, yeah, I guess our job as Ukrainian journalists is to just identify how to address these narratives and what we should do about them. Well, for instance, there's another narrative that Russians are not at fault for the war, that it's only Putin who is responsible for the war, which is an outright lie, because just the recent polls, or even more than 70% of Russians feel pride about the war. Despite this, there's a narrative being pushed also in the international sphere that it is only Putin who is responsible, and therefore the ordinary Russians, they shouldn't suffer, which is a narrative being pushed to undermine the sanctions against the Russian regime in Russia. So basically, our goal is also to identify these kinds of narratives, which is more sophisticated than any kind of fake. Well, regarding like fakes in the classical sense, we just had like the first deep fake of Zelensky, which we were warned that there would be deep fakes of Zelensky signing a capitulation or something. And the deepfake arrived, but it was very poorly done. So it did not live up to expectations and announcements, so to speak. But you know, the other, like the big narratives that Russia is pushing, especially internationally, they are very, very, of course, troubling. To make sure that the truth gets out, the truth about Russian aggression, the truth about this insane war, the truth about this absolutely inhumane regime, and hopefully that this will contribute to Ukraine's victory in the war, so the truth will triumph. Hopefully our work will help later find a solution so that Russia does not attack anybody else, and so this tragedy does not repeat. Because I think it has been really a grave mistake to underestimate the perniciousness of Putin's regime and the fascist state that Russia has turned into. Putin, in a speech, he called for the denazification of Ukraine. But a Russian media outlet, a state Russian media outlet, a few days after the invasion, it praised Putin for taking steps to solve the Ukrainian problem, to find an ultimate solution to the Ukrainian problem for future generations of Russians. Can you imagine this? This is accepted normal in Russia, and it is being done to the total oblivion of the world. So I'm hoping that our work will help shed a light on this so that hopefully we will not repeat the tragedy of the Second World War. For me, of course, it is a question whether objective reporting is possible at all, since we are all persons, we all have our own positions, and some people say that it is just an illusion that we can be truly impartial. We, of course, can try to cover all sides of the situation, but I think that the world has finally woken up to the realization that you cannot give a liar a microphone to hear the other point of view. Yeah. If a country is persistently lying, that is not the other point of view. If a country is persistently advancing a narrative that is justifying its invasions, it's justifying its right to domination over other nations, that's not impartiality. That is just abetting the aggressor. That is just giving him the tribune and the microphone. But of course, right now, I think what is most important is actually to be as critical as possible, to establish the facts as clearly as possible, to basically just to access all information as always, as a critical journalist, and trust nobody until you hear it from 3 sources.